We are able to be more resilient as individuals when we are part of a resilient community, and practicing loving community makes us resilient. Resilience is being able to get up when you've been knocked down. I get knocked down, but I get up again, because you're never going to keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again, because you're never going to keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again, because you're never going to keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again, because you're never going to keep me down. That's right. I had to wait a minute until the song was over before I started, because going right after that was not going to be the best thing to do. Resilience is a characteristic of systems, healthy systems. It's part of a life cycle that circles and spirals and adapts and changes and keeps going. Ecologist C.S. Holling framed resilience as the capacity of an ecosystem to absorb disturbance and maintain function, structure, and feedback loops, and return to a level of equilibrium such as existed before the disturbance. And now, biologists and social scientists all acknowledge this is what it's called the adaptive cycle, that this happens in all kinds of ecosystems, rainforests and deserts, estuaries and mountains, the woods, but also in individual organisms and also in groups, families, organizations, even societies and countries. And the adaptive cycle has 4 parts. The first is growth or exploitation, and then conservation, which is storing enough resources and keeping the status quo. And then the next stage is release. When the resources run out or the way we've always done it no longer works, in order to survive, we let go, because death is part of the life cycle. But in a healthy system, this is followed by reorganization, finding a way to come back, using new or different resources and starting the growth process again. And I really think that our American culture, our American experiment, has finally reached the stage of release. Across multiple systems in our larger system, things are no longer working the way they need to work for most of us to thrive. And we're engaged in a struggle right now to reorganize so we can have life and go on. Because in the adaptive cycle, if you can't reorganize after release, you die. You adapt or die. And what I see going on right now is a struggle between 2 different visions of what we're going to do now after that release. And I think only one of them has a reorganization and a resilience and a way forward. There are some who are trying to reorganize by consolidating power and control among a limited group of people, mostly white, mostly Christian, mostly male. But there are other forces trying to reorganize through practicing a widely inclusive, widely participatory, diverse community model to find and use new resources, to reorganize so we grow again. And I think that totalitarian, authoritarian approach that we're up against is ultimately going to fail, because all it's trying to do with its reorganization is go back to what we were doing before, an even worse way. But that's what got us here. That didn't work. And the counter movement, our resistance movement against it, is reorganizing by practicing non-hierarchical, inclusive, and diverse community. And this approach to reorganizing society can succeed because this is what will foster growth and allow us to build new things, share resources for mutual survival and mutual thriving. When the authoritarian forces act, they want to knock down, and they don't want anyone to get back up again. When our diverse, broad, cooperative community sees someone go down, we want to help them up. We want everyone to be helped up. We want to be helpers. We want to be the helped. We want to be what transforms the water, makes us all resilient. That's how resilience works. The amount of energy and resources that you need to expend to maintain an inclusive community that only allows certain people power is so great, it's bound to burn itself out and fail. Eventually, our goal is to hasten that time. What we know in our broadly diverse collaborative community of resistance is that we could use energy towards reorganizing, towards sharing, towards empowering, towards planting and tending new growth so that we can all thrive. In the end, resilience is not just about hope or just hanging in there. It's about doing so in order to thrive again, come back on the cycle. And a system that refuses to do that will pass away. Sometimes quickly, and sometimes it will hang on to the bitter end until every last bit of resources is used up. And I do think this is where we're at now in this struggle. Fascists and totalitarians are desperately trying to hang on to this old patriarchal capitalistic hierarchy, and they will do so until every single last resource, every single last trick, every single last grasp at power is used up and gone. But the resistance is practicing reorganization, putting into practice as we resist the things that will not only defeat authoritarianism, but put in place a new structure that will allow us all to thrive. There's an internet meme going around, I don't know if you've seen it, but it says, who thought that in America's ugly divorce, the liberals would get the NFL, Jesus, and the Second Amendment? And I think that the liberals are going to get custody of a bunch of other things too. And we're claiming custody of those things, things that have traditionally been claimed and hoarded by the other side as their own. And I think those things are faith, family, community, and patriotism. Because paradoxically, the resistance to fascism is succeeding and will win by practicing the things that conservatism has always championed for itself and thought it had exclusive rights to. Reactionary conservative folks, I think, in our country want to hearken back to some mythical past golden age that never actually really existed anyway. What they say they want to return to a lot of times is traditional American values of faith and family and community and patriotism. But what they mean by faith is only a theologically orthodox Christianity. What they mean by family is a cis-hetero partnership with a mom and a dad and 2.4 children and 1.6 dogs. What they mean by community is a community dominated, run by, and only including in decision-making old, white, straight, cisgendered males who also happen to be Christian. And their patriotism is big on symbols but empty on substance. A lot of flags, a lot of songs, a lot of apple pie, a lot of fireworks. But it's a patriotism that ignores all the difficult things that have happened in our history, a patriotism that pretends the wrongs and evils we've done as a country don't exist. But interestingly to me, what's happening is that those of us opposing these authoritarians are using all these things, faith, family, patriotism, and community, to push them off the stage. The faith revival is in direct response to the meanness and cruelty and overwhelming hypocrisy of the type of Christianity they're clinging to, which is overtly and on purpose patriarchal and hierarchical and sexist and racist and homophobic and transphobic, and only cares about power and domination and control. But what we're seeing rise up against that is the old bedrocks of real faith across all kinds of religious traditions. Helping others, loving your neighbor as yourself, treating people the way you would prefer to be treated, feeding people who are hungry, taking care of people who are sick and injured, even those people who might not do the same for you. And while one side claims Christianity and Jesus, they behave in ways antithetical to every single thing ever documented that Jesus person said. But the other side, who doesn't even necessarily claim or have to be Christian, is practicing all those things. I find that there's a real power for us in that. And Andrew Zoli mentions it in our reading this morning, that just the practice of whatever faith you have, it doesn't matter what the theology is, that you have it is part of an adaptive advantage. That we have the system of spirituality and religion and community to help us be resilient. The revival of family I think we're experiencing is a revival of broadly inclusive family, not a family that only sees one model and limits and denigrates and excludes everybody else from a family, but it's a family that says, family, we're just a group of people who all love each other and take care of each other. That's the kind of family we're using to resist that other side. That everyone deserves to have a family. Everyone deserves to be at home and have a home. Everyone deserves to have elders and children and brothers and sisters and siblings. And because of that, our revival of family is deeply tied to our revival of community that becomes an extension of that inclusive and accepting family. And the community revival is amazing. If you are involved in any resistance community right now, I guarantee one of the things you're seeing is the absolute willingness to embrace anybody who wants to come in. There's a place for you here and there's something for you to do, and we're glad to have you. We want to build the community that crosses bridges, crosses lines of race and religion and language and culture, and assumes that everyone around us is our community, is our neighbor. And neighbors help their neighbors. We don't persecute them, we don't hurt them, we don't harm them. We take care of each other. And that's a strength of community the other side didn't expect to see coming. And it's amazing. In Minneapolis, I heard the story from a woman who said she went down the street when one of her neighbors was abducted and introduced herself to a Latina neighbor she hadn't really gotten to know. And they started hosting block parties every other week at one of their houses and invited the whole street, even the people with Trump signs in their yard. And their reason was, they'll be damned if more of our neighbors are going to get hurt without at least all our neighbors knowing who these people are. And it worked. This is the type of community that resists exclusiveness and resists that power dominating, only a few people in control, only a few people matter authoritarianism. Because that kind of community is empowering. It helps us all thrive, even through the difficult trauma where we are right now. But on the other side, it's showing us the kind of community we need to be when we win, so we don't get back to this point ever again. One of the things that kept coming up for me over and over in the days I was in Minneapolis is, why can't we be nice to each other like this all the time? We'd never get to this point. So right now, we're having modeled for us the world after. If we can put into practice going forward those things that help us thrive, that are helping us survive right now. And the patriotism that we're reclaiming is a patriotism that's proud of who we are and proud of our history, while at the same time acknowledging all the bad parts. Because what good is it if you only pick the good parts? You can't do anything to change what went wrong going forward. And what I see emerging now is that inclusive type of patriotism that's starting more and more and among more and more people to say, oh, that's what they mean. Oh, that's what I didn't get, you know? Last week, an Episcopal priest from Houston named Joseph UU said in one of his sermons, patriotism is love. It's gratitude. It's saying I care enough about my country to tell the truth about it, to celebrate what's good and work to fix up what's broken. Nationalism, on the other hand, is idolatry. It says my nation is a nation above critique, above others, and the only one of God's favorite. And once you slap God's seal of approval on your own flag, congratulations, you have just made your country into an idol, a false god, a golden calf. So I believe these approaches to faith, family, community, and patriotism are proving to help make us resilient. I need a different size shirt so my collar stays in. Lost weight, my collars don't fit, and now the collars fall out. Because being resilient, we'll bounce, and we'll bounce back. We'll reorganize a new community under improved values of inclusiveness and togetherness that will help us thrive going forward. And as technology and social media are employed to strengthen the propaganda machine of the totalitarianism, a strange thing is happening on the other side. The resistance is thriving on face-to-face gatherings and getting to know each other in real time, embodied right here with each other. And community helps us all thrive. Community helps us all be resistant. That old American idol of the individual pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps doesn't work. We all need help. We all need each other at some point. And it's the community going forward that's going to be the leader. Another interesting aspect of all the resistance movements right now is that there aren't presidents and chairpersons and CEOs and leaders. There are teams and partnerships and coalitions. Going forward, the way to lead the community is through community. In his closing address to 2,000 people after a mindfulness retreat in 1993, Thich Nhat Hanh said, "It's possible the next Buddha will not be an individual. The next Buddha may certainly take the form of a community practicing understanding, loving kindness, and loving community." The next Buddha isn't a Buddha, it's a Sangha. Interestingly enough, one of the characteristics of successful anti-fascist movements over the last 100+ years is that they are led by a broad-based, widely diverse coalition that encourages everyone to participate. And I saw this on full display in the days I was in Minneapolis. Those were privileged putting themselves in the way between danger and their neighbors who would be harmed. The sense of hope and courage was everywhere and wonderful to experience. There was anxiety and fear and trauma too, but I was shocked at how much hope and courage and even sense of humor. People who had gone through so much were cracking jokes all the time. They were not giving up on joy no matter what was going on. It was amazing and something you could feel even as an outsider. People were jumping into helping without even knowing what or how to do it. One woman spoke to us of having pushed almost $300,000 through her personal Venmo to give away. The resilient resistance community coalesces and works so well because I think a resilience process is happening in a lot of individuals right now too. That we're letting go of some of the old ways that we thought life in our society had to be, even though it may not be great at the moment. I think a lot more people are saying maybe it's just time to let it go and make something new, something that'll be better. In this new community, for us to be resilient, we offer not only inclusivity, but meaningful ways to contribute to the community. In Minneapolis, the activists I met with and learned from didn't talk about having a safe space. A lot of places aren't safe there. But they used the term brave space, where we will do our best to keep each other safe, and together, by doing that, we will remain brave together. And they taught us something about how to tell everyone they really can be included in the work we're doing as a community. And they talked about the stoplight method of activism. I had not heard this before, that there are different levels of ways to be active: green, yellow, and red. Red is high risk. In red level activism, your actions or activism may lead to physical harm or arrest or other legal issues. Yellow activism is moderate risk. There may be a possibility of physical harm, and there may be a possibility of other consequences, arrests or legal things or something. And green activism is very low risk. It's being able to be active and involved in the movement in a more safe manner, with minimal chance of harm and minimal chance of arrest or other legal repercussions. And everyone brought up over and over again, not only is every level of activism needed, no one level is any more important or valuable than any other. It was reinforced over and over and over again. And each night I ate dinner at a Unitarian church where a coalition of people had gotten together, made food, and served us food. The people who made, served, and cleaned up after those meals were as important as the people who volunteered to get arrested at the airport when I was there. Absolutely the exact same. And that was said over and over and over again. There is something for all of us to do, because it's the widely participatory movement that defeats totalitarianism. And being able to include everybody with something meaningful to do is how we get there. All of us have a role and all of us have a place. Being involved in the resistance, red, yellow, or green, matters. In their study of violent and nonviolent resistance movements spanning over 100 years, called Why Civil Resistance Works, The Strategic Logic of Nonviolent Conflict, Erica Chenoweth and Maria Stefan said that diverse, broad-based coalitions are a characteristic of every successful nonviolent regime change movement over the last 100 years. And what I see is this is exactly what's being practiced. It's being practiced by Danbury Knights for Immigrants. It's being practiced in Minneapolis. It's being practiced in Maine. It's being practiced in Chicago, in Los Angeles, and everywhere we're fighting back against this stuff. And everywhere. There is music. Notice we're singing a lot more in here lately. There's music, there's art. There was art everywhere in the street in Minneapolis. There was love and support. There was automatic inclusion and acceptance. You're here to help. Great, thank you. There was pain, but there was just hope everywhere, like it was the biggest garden of hope you've ever experienced. And there was joy. There was struggle in the day, but there was, darn it, we're going to have fun tonight because this is hard. And everyone was included in the work and in the celebration. We are able to be more resilient as individuals when we are part of a resilient community, and practicing loving community makes us resilient. In the days ahead, we're going to need to live into our mission as Unitarian Universalists like most of us have never done before. But the important part of our mission, even in these difficult days, isn't all the justice work we're doing, believe it or not. And it may not even be all the spirituality stuff. It's the practice of inclusive community. Because it's in that practice of community that we will grow spiritually and that we will have the strength to have our justice movement succeed.
Check out my website and blog at tonylorenzen.com for even more resources that will open your mind, touch your heart, and inspire your spirit.